for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dominique Bachelet. I'm a professor in biological and ecological engineering. And last term, I organized a series of talks by scientists to inspire artists. So they create a piece of art that would address the positive aspect of climate change. And the art show will occur in October. And the show is called What Will Nature Do? So this series this term is co-sponsored by the OSU Artsci Group with Jerry at its head, the Corvallis Art Center, which considers this a follow-up from the previous series of talks, and the Department of Biological and Ecological Engineering, where I'm hosted. And it is by scientists who are also artists, or I should say artists who are also scientists, with the goal to explore how their science might inform their art or their art might inform their science. So it's my great pleasure today to introduce Randall Milstein, who has been a faculty member at Oregon State University for 31 years. Dr. Milstein is an astronomer in residence at the OSU, to the Oregon NASA Space Grant Consortium, and teaches astronomy courses for the OSU Physics Department, as well as numerous courses in the University Honors College and the College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences. His research interests include astrogeology, impact cratering dynamics, and archaeoastronomy. And his introduction is the worst for me to pronounce. He's a regular outreach speaker and enjoys engaging with the public on topics of planetary science, astronomy, and the role of science fiction in popular culture. In collaboration with Dr. Joseph Orozco, Randall co-hosts the annual OSU Trek Wars celebration, which I had never heard of and I'm really curious about. Before his career as a professional scientist, Randall Milstein was educated and trained as a photographer, and he's almost never without a camera. Most noted for his dance photography, in the last 10 years, he has begun photographing portraits of cosplayers at popular cultural conventions. His photographs appear in solo and group exhibitions. They are represented in government, corporate, and private collections and appear in numerous publications, books, posters, and advertisements. So without further ado, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Dominic. I know that was a big mouthful there to go through all that.
But I should have rehearsed it.
Let me share my screen with you and begin because it's kind of in three parts what I want to share with you. And it's best told kind of as a story in a way. So we'll share my screen first with you here. And hopefully everybody can see that. Is the whole slide there?
Yes.
Yes, well, that's me. And my web page is right underneath my name there. And I want to tell a little interesting story about how I got started. Dominique and I were discussing this just a little bit before, is that when I originally went to school to get my university educations, plural, I went to art school originally, and I was trained and graduated with a degree in commercial photography. And I worked in that field for a while and found that I didn't like taking pictures of autopsies, crime scenes, General Motors cars, Monsanto chemicals, and thought if I just did art, I'd only be showing the world my interpretation of something. And I really figured out I wanted to know how everything worked. And that meant going back for a couple more years and taking another degree in sciences. And I worked for about a decade as an enforcement person against oil and gas companies at the Geological Survey in Michigan, and was handed a project. That project led to a graduate degree in astrogeology, and then went back to work and then decided to continue that research and to get my doctoral degree in space geology. And during that time, I kind of forgot about my other degree. Things got kind of put away. And I ended up here at OSU, both as a student and then later as a faculty member, and then with the space grant. And now, interestingly enough, back in 2017, we had kind of a cool thing happen here in Oregon. We had a total solar eclipse. And it gave me a chance to take out my cameras again and start using them for a scientific purpose like that. And again, there's a couple of pictures here of when we were out in PV field during this thing. The space grant had a big series of things that went on. We were launching research balloons right nearby as well. And during this time, I have a colleague that works in physics. His name is Tom Carrico. And Tom is one of the world's best astrophotographer. And we're lucky to have him here in Corvallis and at OSU. And the interesting thing is I had met Tom 20 years before and didn't realize that he was an astrophotographer. I met him because his daughter was a ballerina. And this comes full cycle in just a little while. And during this time, we did a series of 9 or 10 workshops over in Fairbanks Hall to allow people to make safety equipment to safely photograph the eclipse and not damage their eyes or their equipment. And over the years, I've used that photographic skill that I developed as an art student to do other photographic things. Picture of the eclipse. And I found myself shooting pictures of comets at different times as well. Of course, this plays into that whole astronomy background of mine. This is a picture of Comet Neowise from this summer. I have other images along the ways of sunspots that we've shot, the transit of Venus back in 2012. But one of the other things that I studied when I was in university was a minor in atmospheric physics. And I was very interested in phenomena that happened in the skies. And of course, this helps when you're looking at planetary atmospheres as well around the solar system. And so I always have a camera around. And so many people spend so much of their lives now looking down at their phone and not looking up. And not only do they miss the geese flying by, they miss the eagles that fly around campus every once in a while, but they miss all this cool stuff in the sky.
Randall,
And yes,
I don't think you are in full screen yet.
I'm not at full screen yet. What do I need to do? Move left or right?
You go left and you go to start from this slide. Play from this slide.
It just says slideshow.
Go to the left. Left.
Left. Play from start?
No, the next one. The next, yep. There you go. Perfect.
Wow. I learn something new every day. Thanks, you guys. I will go back and let you look at those other pictures then.
Good.
There is a picture of all of us doing our thing at the eclipse. And of course, that's ugly on me. But this is a really great event. And again, over the years, this is a picture shot with film. That's how far back in time that was. I guess we're not square. Are we still squared up? Can everybody see everything okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. And Comet Neowise this last summer. But this is the kind of thing you can see if you look up in the sky. This is a nacreous cloud in a circumhorizon arc. The one thing that I've really been looking forward to seeing sometime in the future are noctilucent clouds. There was a group of these over Corvallis last summer that were photographed here at 4 in the morning by someone that are absolutely stunning. And it's a bucket list phenomena for mine that I haven't seen. I've seen the Aurora Borealis, but have never been able to photograph it yet. So that's on my list too. But these nacreous clouds are really interesting. And it was one of those days when I was driving home from school and saw a bunch of people stopped along the side of the road staring at the sky. And they didn't know what they were looking at. Of course, I had a background in it, I knew, so I stopped, grabbed my camera, and photographed this picture. Now, this is ice crystals very high in the atmosphere, 55, 60,000 feet, blown by the upper jet stream, and you're getting this wonderful rainbow effect. Now, or something like this. This is a sundog. It's the ring around the sun, but also you have some crepuscular rays that are going, those beautiful rays that come out, and it was right at sunset. So it made a spectacular viewing, and what a wonderful thing to see, a very uplifting, quiet moment right at sunset to see something like this, but you have to be mindful and look for it. And you can also see this as well. This is anti-crepuscular rays going the opposite direction, where it focuses at a point on the eastern horizon at sunset and the rays go the opposite direction. And one of the other very interesting things about Corvallis in the valley that many people don't know, atmospheric science people kind of know, is that our valley is famous for its cloud formations. And people will come who are interested in this from all over the place to see our clouds. And many of the photographs that I've had people ask if they can use in books are cloud formations that show up here in the valley. And you have to look up. And Stephen Hawking said that, don't look down. We have to look up. Our future is up. And this is something really unusual. I hope you can see it in the upper part of this picture. This was over Martin Luther King Park here in Corvallis back about 6 or 7 years ago. This is a horizontal vortex. This is basically a tornado sideways in the sky. And again, if you're not looking up, you miss that really cool thing. And also, it's fun for me as, a science nerd, even know what it is when I see it. That makes me feel like, oh, I did learn something, 30 years ago. And these are some of those cloud formations that we see here. These are very unusual. It's a series of waves that are going through the upper atmosphere. And you can see the ripple effect that's caused there. And you don't get clouds like this in other parts of North America. They are really restricted because of the geography we have between the ocean, the coast range, the valley, and the Cascade Mountains before you get to the high desert. And as a result, we have these multi-layered dimensional atmospheric sorting of these clouds. But again, if you're not looking up, you miss all this stuff. Now, one of the other things that we have is so often people want to look to the west at sunset. And maybe they'll get to see a really wonderful picture like this. This was after an Icelandic eruption many years ago. I took this when I was a young photographer in Michigan, and you have this intense color due to the Rayleigh effect of electromagnetic radiation being sorted out by particles that are smaller than the wave size. And you can have this very intense color that shows up. Now, one of the things I find very interesting is people will always look to the sunset because it's stunning and it moves us emotionally. But what they forget to do is turn around and look the other direction. And I tell this to my students in astronomy class, and I show this example. And when we have times when we can go out and do observations, of course we can't now, and we probably won't next year again. COVID is too dangerous to put your eye, a mucous membrane, up to a telescope with other people doing the same thing. But what I do is I take them out. We're out by the llama farm, out on the way to the covered bridge. It's very dark, the sun is setting, and we turn around and see that. That's the eastern sky. It's just as cool as the western sky. And this is called the belt of Venus. And what is happening is the Earth is rotating east into this darkness that's at the bottom of the picture here. That's what's referred to as the dark rising. I know it's a famous science fiction book, but it's also what's really happening. And it rises up, and as it does, it gets these beautiful pink sunsets in the eastern sky here in Corvallis. And we forget to look that way. And this is also where you would have the anti-crepuscular waves would go in that direction as well. And it's those little simple things, I think, that are real important that we remember. We're always so focused on one thing, whether it's a cell phone or looking to the west at a sunset. We forget the subtleties of the beauty that's behind us in the other direction. Now, one of the very interesting things I mentioned before is that Tom Carrico, a colleague from physics, I had met before I knew he was an astrophotographer through his daughter. Very interestingly enough, I have a family that's lived in Corvallis long before I ever moved here. And one of my cousins runs the ballet school. the regional school of ballet, the Chamber Ballet of Corvallis. And I had been injured training for a multi-sport race, biathlons, triathlons, and so I couldn't run. But she knew my family has a history of dance. And she said, you will show up at 2 o'clock on this day at the dance studio and you're dancing with Linda. And I was like, I don't know who that is, and why should I do that? I don't know anything about ballet. You will show up at this time and you will be there. And it turned out that I guess I turned into a dancer 20 years ago. And interestingly enough, it turns out that Tom Carrico's daughter was one of the ballerinas. And he was a backstage, working the curtain and stuff at the theater for productions. And that's how I had met him. And then eventually find out we had this interest in astronomy and became fast friends after that. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, rather than just using my cameras to photograph sciencey things, phenomena in the sky, or every once in a while take a picture of a comet or something, I start seeing really interesting things taking place at the dance studios. And so I would take my camera with me and begin photographing. And this was before real good digital cameras. This was on film. So it was very difficult because the lighting is very stark. And as time went by, I got more powerful and powerful, and digital cameras came along, and my ability to photograph what I really wanted to do became available to me. But I also found that the community that these dancers put together was very powerful and very giving community. And I really enjoyed the time I spent with them. And I look forward every year to participating, especially in the Nutcracker productions, which COVID has put a slam on, which is kind of heart-wrenching. But at the same time, I got to do other things too, like be the grandfather in Peter and the Wolf, or play the main adult character in something called the Monster Dance one time. And again, my cameras were always with me all of a sudden. And I had taken some pictures and was offered a gallery show at the Bridgeport Gallery in Portland. And I showed those, and several of the professional dance companies then got in contact with me and said, would you please come and take pictures of our dancers when they're performing? And I said, yeah, sure. And slowly in doing that, I realized that my science was playing into what I was doing. And that is that dance is physics. It is energy, it's power, light, sound, angular momentum, and the transference of that angular momentum is torque. And I started photographing these professional dance companies. And right now I've been fortunate to photograph 29 international dance companies all over the world. And when people pay me the one compliment, actually there's two that really are powerful for me. One is they say, we can tell your pictures from anybody else's when we see them. And the other is the dancers. Especially ballet dancers have often been portrayed as kind of little fragile porcelain dolls that, don't touch them, they'll break. These dancers, modern dancers, ballet dancers, dub steppers, I don't care what it is, these are powerful athletes, absolutely trained just to be the peak of what they're doing. And when a ballerina at one time came up to me when I gave her a photograph, and I'll show you that photograph in a minute, and she said, I love this because it makes me look fierce. And she is, and that's really powerful. And I think what makes the photographs different than other people photographing the dance companies is that I've seen enough perfect turgites. I don't need to take a picture of that. And what I want is that power and light and energy and that fierceness that comes out and makes the picture completely unique from anybody else's. They want the perfect little arabesque and everybody's hands and feet are just perfect. What I want is this. That's dramatic. It tells me that's a strong, woman dancer there. Or this is Kathy Martusa. I hope you can see her foot down at the bottom there. I have some control things in my way here. But that's the picture I gave Kathy and said, this is what I see when I see you dance. And she says, it makes me look fierce. Yeah, not only that, but when I see this picture, aesthetically, it's very unique because you see it broke into three parts. And I started finding that I was using a golden ratio setup in my mind as I was shooting pictures, almost doing it instinctively. And somebody might try to manipulate a painting or a drawing or an architectural rendering in some way to do that, but I was finding my brain was timing when I was shooting photographs based on my understanding of that ratio. This is again is motion and power, and Miss Kathy is totally telling a story, which all dancers do with their bodies, without words, just music and motion. And to see the power that's being displayed there is pure physics. And something like this as well, there's drama in that. It's powerful. I don't want this perfect little pose. This is everything in motion all the time. It's in that image, and I really enjoy that picture. It's one of my favorites that I have over the 20 some years I've been shooting these. Just so much going on there. But again, it's physics. This again is from George Balanchine's ballet called Apollo. And this is actually a golden ratio spiral. And after I took the picture, I went back several months later, and the director of Oregon Ballet Theater was there. And I asked Chris at that time, I said, do you think that when George Balanchine set up this dance, that choreographed, that he know that that was a golden ratio? Or did he just do that because he knew it was visually beautiful? And Chris said, I don't think he would have had any idea what that is. But he said he knew what a beautiful visual was. But when you look at that, that is a perfect spiral out of Alison Roper's hip all the way around, just like you would find in a Nautilus shell. It's a perfect golden ratio spiral. And again, this is something I eyeballed because I have the science background. I know what that is. But at the same time, it doesn't distract a moment from how beautiful the images and the poses by those dancers. Again, I think power is important, light is important. In this case, color comes out to, this is not false colored. That's the red velvet and the stark lighting that the art director put on this. And as a result, you end up with a fairly dramatic picture that is part, like I said, power and energy, even though it's not moving fast. There's a sensualness to the lighting and everything that's going on here. And there is no other picture from that ballet that looks like that. And that made me really proud that I was able to shoot an image that no one else had. And no one else had thought that that was worth taking a picture of. Yet, to me, when you have a ballet called The Rite of Spring, that's kind of a powerful picture. I also work not only with the Oregon Ballet Theater, I work continually with the Bodyvox Dance Company out of Portland, one of their modern dance companies. Really great company, won Emmys and all kinds of wonderful things. And the directors are incredible in their collaboration with other artists, whether it's photographers, cinematographers. They have a whole series of films that they do. And again, this is a picture about power and motion and emotion that Miss Jackson is portraying as she's being swept across the floor. Again, that's what strikes me, and that's what I want to portray in an image. Another company that I work with very closely in Portland is the Polaris Dance Theater. It's the modern dance company as well, noted for very striking and powerful performances. Also Northwest Dance Theater, I work with from Portland. the JAG, the Junior Artist Generators, I also work with quite frequently up there as well. So again, it's how you approach taking the picture for me. And I go in with my science mind, getting ready to take these pictures. I know it's going to be beautiful no matter what they do. It's going to be, wonderful to take part in and to photograph, but my mind turns into, how do I see this as energy? How do I portray that? And so then my science mind clicks in, and the artist and the scientist get to combine for a little while. Now, interestingly enough, about 10 years ago, I had some students in one of my class that were really wonderful students, and they would come in with science fiction t-shirts on all the time. And they knew I taught the science of science fiction class in the honors college. And they started asking me about, my interest in things. And they said that they were cosplayers. I have no idea what that is at the time. And so they started to explain that to me, that they travel all around the country going to these large popular culture conventions. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of cool. And finally they said, we're going up to Portland on this day. It would be really cool, Doc, if you came to that. I think you might like it. It might be kind of interesting for you. And I said, yeah, fine. So I happened to take my camera with me. But I forgot this picture. I wanted to show you this too, talking about torque. This is from the San Francisco Ballet. Got a little ahead of myself in my storytelling there. And the other thing too, when I photograph dancers, they are not staged. They're all during live performances, the final dress, rehearsal. We don't use cameras during an actual performance when there's theater goers there, the noise is too much. But we come in for the final dress, and so they're all live performances when it's done. No picture is staged. We got these large popular culture conventions. So I end up going to this thing, not knowing what to expect other than that I paid $35 for a ticket to go. And while I was there, like I said, I met up with my friends who are here. This is Danny and Craig Hoots. Like I said, Danny's a science fiction writer and author and owns a comic book company now, and her husband is a big accountant. But they go to these things and they meet, motion picture actors and things and get autographs. But they also dress up and do this cosplay. As you can see, they have some Harry Potter Hogwarts outfits on there. And they were trying to give me some instructions, say you should just wander around and see what's going on here. And I had not turned one corner, and I met this woman at this thing, Geek Star Costuming. She said, come on over, see what I got. I was like, yeah, fine. And I met Claire Cassidy. And so for the last decade, Claire has kind of been a great friend, but also a guide through this community because she always shows up at these. That's where her business is. She makes her living by selling things, Geek Star Costuming for these people. And she kind of filled me in on what was going on because I was still kind of lost. And she said, you got your big camera there. You should, use that. Go and look at things. See what people are up to. Talk to them. And so I took this picture of Claire on the left. Was actually the first picture I ever took of anyone at a popular convention culture or, event. And so I always keep that around, saying this is kind of what took me down a brand new road, because rather than hard physical science, all of a sudden I started using my cameras for a social science type of project. I'd had lots of shows, around the country of my dance photography. They would ask for 25 or 30 pictures, and they'd hang them in some gallery. And that was always nice. But this was new for me. This was a completely different culture. And one day I'm out, and one of my colleagues in the Honors College, Dr. Joseph Orozco, said, I heard you, went to a Comic-Con. What'd you think of that? I said, yeah, it was kind of cool. I really enjoyed, the culture there and what people were doing. And we began a conversation. And he told me about the Anaris Project for Alternative Futures, which is a project at OSU from the philosophy department. They deal with social justice issues and things like that, based on some of the work of Ursula K. Le Guin. And Joseph is very big cosplayer. He's a Star Trek super nerd. Well, I just happen to be a Star Wars super nerd. And so we started talking and what we were going to do. And he thought, you go to these popular culture conventions, and I know you've been taking pictures. Have you ever really sat and talked with those people, cosplayers? And I said, no, but next time I go, I think I will, because I'm interested in this as a subculture. And at the same time, Joseph said, well, I'd like to put some together for May 4th, because every year there's May the 4th be with you, people say. And we could have something where we could debate the different merits of some of these popular science fiction franchises. And so we came up with Trek Wars. And we've been doing this now for, I think, 5 years on May 4th. We've been doing them online. Of course, last year and this year will be online as well. And we pick a subject: social justice within the two franchises. Visions of heroic women was another one within the franchises. Villains, who we thought was the worst villain and why in each one of the different franchises. And our choices have been really different from what people would expect. They've really come up with some wonderful dynamics in question and answers. And usually we invite a guest to come as well. This is Mohammed Sakibnia, and he was one of Joseph's students, and now he's in law school, and he is an incredible public speaker, brilliant on social justice topics as well. And he's traveled with us also to Comic-Cons, where we started giving these panel discussions at the big cons now as well, which is exciting, very fun to interact with several hundred people in a big room who are all amped about what you want to talk about. And we haven't decided on this year's topic yet for May 4th. We just talked to Joseph this morning for a bit, and we're looking forward to it. Gives us the chance to dress up in our funny costumes, to cosplay a little ourselves. And interestingly enough, why I might not have made that choice, Joseph was married in his Star Trek's captain uniform. So I think that's really pretty cool. But I started going to these conventions and walking around with my cameras, and would go up and talk to people and always engage in the conversation first. Say, your cosplay is really amazing. Could you tell me about this? Why did you choose this person, to portray? How long have you been doing this? What's your interest? And then ask if may I take your portrait? And to approach that portrait differently than just people saying, oh, stand back and put an arm around my kid and I'll take a picture of Darth Vader. That wasn't my interest. My interest was in the people themselves, because no matter how complex the costuming is or the makeup, there is still that person's face in there somewhere. And it tells a really in-depth story, especially when you ask them about why they're there and what they're engaged in. And it starts outlining this really open, progressive, very accepting subculture. And everybody there is happy. They want to be there. Doesn't matter. These people are strangers, are people, but they're interested in the costume. And to have that in the culture the way it's been for at least the last handful of years, it's very uplifting and hopeful. But I would go to take these pictures and then show them their own picture. And they'll even say, even if they've been in the mirror for hours putting on the makeup, I've never seen myself look like that before. And that made me feel good, that I'm portraying their personality through this character. You can have people that are these who may be physically challenged in some way, but they're dressed up like Superman or the Batman or, a Star Wars character. And for 2 or 3 days, they're superheroes. And how valuable that is, especially in confidence in someone. And it's really powerful. And again, this is completely different than the science stuff I do. This is social science. I'm not trained in this, but it's of interest to me. And I started taking these portraits of these people. And there's always something that comes through in these images. And the gentleman on the right, who's Darth Maul from the Star Wars franchise, the Star Wars universe, is very interesting. I had been walking through this crowd of 50,000 people and saw this woman with 3 little kids, and I knew she's a ballerina from Portland. And I went over and said, "Oh, was that, how you doing?" And she said, "I'm trying to find my husband." I said, "Well, what's he look like?" And she said, "He's done up like Darth Maul." So I show her the picture. She said, "That's him. Where was he?" I said, "Over by the bathrooms." So I didn't realize that was her husband underneath all this face paint. But again, there is something very telling in shooting a portrait of these people and why they chose that subject matter. And so I want to show you some pretty pictures. If you have a comment you want to make, or I can make a comment about them, it'll be interesting. This is a young woman who is kind of a modified, more glammed up Princess Leia, kind of from the Star Wars franchise. And you'll be surprised. You just ask someone, after you've talked to them, engage them, show interest in what they're doing. May I take your portrait? And they want to make some pose. You go, "You know what? Just be yourself. Let me take this picture. And I'll show you what we get." Or, Nightmare Sally and Beetlejuice. And I think it was interesting because they were married. They're a married couple. And they were both into what they were doing. They were so happy to be in Seattle, to be dressed up in their wonderful costume, and probably helped each other out putting everything together. Or this woman who's done up from the Day of the Dead. Just very powerful, massive red hat she was wearing. This big yellow false flowers behind her ears. And again, there's something when you look at her face, there's such an ease and a confidence about what's going on there. Or Poison Ivy from the Batman franchise on the right. And then the woman on the left is done up from a character from the film Hook. I can't remember the young lost boy it was, but really ornate costume with feathers and these bamboo rods and things. It's just very complex. This is actually an OSU student who was up in Portland at a Comic-Con as Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. Or Megamind on the left and Dr. Manhattan on the right. But all it takes is a movement of an eye or a relaxing jaw or not to smirk, and the huge message comes across in these portraits. These are 2 twin sisters who were portraying minor characters from a Star Trek movie. But again, people who are in the know would come by and kind of go, "Oh, that's really subtle. That's good. That's awesome cosplay." And so that makes them really happy that someone catches on to that. Or these characters from the Star Wars universe. You have, of course, the character Rey, someone portraying her on the left, and Anaz Ventra on the right, one of the pivotal characters in the Star Wars universe. Or this, comic book characters. You have the Batman, who then also becomes great in the films, the Dark Knight movies. And you have a character from the famous author Neil Gaiman, his series called The Sandman. And this is the Angel of Death. And this one was confident in portraying this very subtle character. Or an elf from Lord of the Rings. And you can see she's happy. She's dressed up as an elf. She's having a great time. Got her bow or arrow. She's walking around. And like I said, just happy to be part of all this. And of course, it makes you feel uplifted when you're there too, seeing them. Or these. You have the woman on the right is the Queen, portrayed, of course, by Charlize Theron in Snow White Huntsman. And of course, on the left is a guy who could be Ewan McGregor's clone from the early Star Wars movies, episodes 1 through 3. He's Obi-Wan. You have a Klingon on the left. You can see this is a very mature person. This is restricted to just young people. And of course, you have another person done up with intense makeup from Day of the Dead on the right. But think of the time that it would take to airbrush that much makeup in the morning, because these people show up at 10 o'clock in the morning to have this ready, and have plotted this out, drawn into exactly what they wanted to do, and then have that airbrushing done. And of course, then you have Captain America, from the Marvel comic universe on the left. And of course, this Stormtrooper takeoff on the right, kind of a mashup from Star Wars. And what's very interesting too is at these large conventions, they have a couple of groups. One of them is out of Portland, the Intel company. A lot of their engineers make replicas of the little robot droids from Star Wars. And they have 20 or 30 of them will be there in different colors at these conventions. And then they'll also have a group of people in Portland. It's called the 501st Legion. I think it's the Cloud City Garrison. No, it's Vader's Fist is the garrison there. And in Seattle, it's the 501st Legion, the Cloud City Garrison. And there are people who dress up as characters from Star Wars. And they have all their battle armor and all that kind of stuff on. And people will come up and want to have their picture taken with them. Little kids come up and they do that for free. But if it's adults, they make a donation. And they take your picture with the robots or whatever. And all that money goes to Dornbecker's Children's Hospital. And they go around and do these charities all over the country. There are 501st Legion groups everywhere. And it's a big investment to buy that armor or to design your cosplay that you look like Obi-Wan or you look like Princess Leia. But then they go and do this for charity. There is also a group that does it if they're fans of the Firefly Serenity franchise. They're called the Browncoats. And the same thing, and all their money goes for, in Portland, I think it went to reading for children, all the money they earn, and the one in Seattle went toward veteran rehab and PTSD treatment. So this same cosplay community in small groups is going out and doing these wonderful outreach charitable events. And again, like I said, to be part of that, just to go and talk to them and say, well, why did you choose Captain America? Why did you choose to be Wonder Woman? What about that rang a bell in your head and you thought, I think I want to dress up like Wonder Woman. So again, then Joseph and I will sit down, we'll discuss these things, in terms of what that community is doing, how it is accepting of all these different people across cultural barriers, race, sex, doesn't matter. If you're cosplaying, you're part of the community, you're in. And that's different. We don't see that a lot in our culture very often. There's so much conflict. And I was talking to Dominique a little earlier, and I think when I look back on my COVID year, of being under the protocols, that it'd be great to go to a movie. Yeah, fun. I can watch movies on TV. But what I can't do is I can't go to a dance performance. And I haven't been able to photograph anything for a year. I haven't been able to go to a single Comic-Con. Normally I would go to maybe 3 to 4 a year. It's going on 2 years with 0. And those were things that I really, truly missed, that creative outlet to go in and take these wonderful pictures of these powerful athletes, and at the same time to go and be part and engage with this wonderful, I don't want to even call them a subculture, but a great part of our culture. It's a popular expression of people's devotion to their entertainment world, science fiction especially. And so it's been a really great journey. Like I said, started out as an artist, went to pure science for a long time, and then have found a way to mesh that science, whether hard science or social science, to still have a creative expression. And I hope you guys have some questions. I hope I did an okay job of explaining how my science and stuff work with this. What do you got for me?
That was a great presentation. Fabulous photos.
Thanks.
The dancers were just so powerful. It was just beautiful.
Well, if you want, if we go way back to the very beginning, the very first slide, if you have a piece of paper handy,
Mm-hmm.
you have to push the button every time. There we go. That web address right underneath my name is my Zenfolio account. And you can push on two of the galleries that are there. One of them is the dance gallery, which probably has 70 or 80 photographs in it. And the other one is the cosplayer gallery, and it probably has 40 or 50 images in there. And you should be able to click on those and then go through and enjoy the pictures at your own speed and your own pace without me pushing a button.
Cool. Cool. Cynthia had a question. I don't know if she's going to unmute herself. She wanted to know if you were still dancing.
Well, in my kitchen when I'm making dinner, usually. Yeah, right now there, have only been, at least at the Regional School of Ballet, because Shelley Sabota is incredibly safe with everything. She doesn't want to expose any young dancer to anything. They only had private lessons, one-on-ones for the last year, basically. But I don't know if there's going to be a Nutcracker this year. We'd have to find a way that it could be safe, but it was a big loss to the community last winter. Mm-hmm. There are usually thousands of people attend the production that's been happening, well, except for last year, almost every year for 30 years. And it's a big thing for the community. Like I said, I met Tom there because he was a backstage dad. But when you have 130 or 40 people from the community involved in a 3 months commitment to rehearse, make sure everything is, right for a very professional performance, that's a big deal for our community. And also, it's, for me, that there are certain people I only get to see once a year, and that's during that 3 month period when we're rehearsing and performing. And those are good and solid friendships, and I like them to always be there. Some of the most important people that I still maintain as friends in the last 20 years are people I met through performing in the Nutcracker. So yeah, for that, I had a history of dancing in Irish and Scottish dancing. And so I know it sounds weird, but despite my last name, most of my family heritage is from Scotland. And I had done that for a long time. And so my cousin knew I could move, and she knew I was strong enough to lift the ballerinas up and not drop them. At the time, I just couldn't run really fast, but dancing was a completely different movement. So yeah, and like I said, I'm so glad that I did that. I always tell my students when somebody asks if you'd like to do something like that, say yes. You'll never regret the experience. So.
Yeah. Always say yes to opportunities. Yes, Cynthia.
Cynth.
Well, I don't even know how to ask this, but obviously you do a lot of editing because digital is, now you can, instead of having to print and develop, a few, now you can. So what kinds of things do you look at when you're editing your bodies of work? Because your pieces are just amazing, the ones you show us.
Well, you can go to the other site and you can see I'll go to a show. If I shoot, like I said, the Rite of Spring, that picture with the dancer in the red leotard there, I probably shot 800 images over the course of 4 hours, and then went through, and I know from that set of images, I probably culled out for my use maybe 10. Now I give the ballet company, I go through and throw out anything that's blurred, you know, too much motion, you can't see anybody, throw that stuff out, and probably give them 100 or 200 images. And then I would pull maybe 10. But of those 10, I know 3 of those from that show, or no, 5 from those 10 have been in gallery exhibitions. One of them was the highest award bidding for the ballet. I gave them a copy to use as a fundraiser, and it was the highest bid piece of work that they had was from this ballet. And it made me feel like I really was helping and adding to the community in some way. So yeah, the numbers are low, but in the case of this picture, you said, oh, you can go in and edit and stuff. I only did one thing to this picture. Basically, I did what Kodachrome would do. Oh, Kodachrome film is oversaturated when I'm shooting. I just overexpose or underexpose the film, excuse me, and it saturates the picture. And it gives me the same effect that the old Kodachrome slide films would give. Now, how I do that's my little secret, because I don't want other shooters to do what I do. But I tend to do that almost exclusively with my dance pictures. The result is also, if I go to black and white, the color is already saturated and it really drags the contrast up high. But again, that's a trick that you learn in photo school, how to deal with contrast. And then the physics of that as well. I understand how to balance white when you're shooting an image. And also when I want to select going to monochromatic versus full color images. But I don't go in and mess around with it like a lot of people do. I don't think that that's right to go in and hyper edit, hyper color change, and all that kind of weird stuff with my imaging. That's just me. Other people are welcome to do that all they want. It's just not in my toolkit.
So
is that okay, Cynthia?
could you explain what the golden rule is briefly?
Golden ratio?
Golden ratio, sorry.
It's a ratio of 1 to 1.643, where if you start with a square, then you double that and double that and double that and double it around, it'll start making a spiral of that ratio. And it is, for some reason, something that the human eye aesthetically finds very pleasing. And my Mac I'm using right here, I know that the screen of this and my big iMac on my desk are that ratio. That Macintosh does that on purpose, so that the screen is that ratio. And that the Parthenon in Greece, in Rome, not in Rome, it's in Athens, excuse me, the ratio of that is a golden ratio. The distance between your eyes, chin, the nose, Vitruvian Man that good old Leonardo drew, that's all golden ratio.
Okay.
And they do it on purpose, and our bodies are that ratio too, which is interesting. And the spiral inside of a pine cone, or a sunflower seed, or a rose, those spiral forms that make up a hurricane or a galaxy, or the water that goes down your drain when you wash the dishes. Those are golden ratio spirals. And whether that has something to do with angular momentum, what the physics of the universe is, we don't know. But it is something that is repeated in nature, and we find it pleasing. I know if you go and pick out moss at the bottom of a tree, it looks really random and it's everywhere. If you take the spores from that moss, put it on the International Space Station, it grows in a golden ratio spiral. Why it does that? Don't know. Not a botanist. But it wants to work in that pattern.
Wow.
And it's very, very intriguing.
Yeah.
It's worth looking up too, because you'll get a lot better description than that if you just hit golden ratio, or the golden mean is another term that's used for that as well.
I have a question about your themes.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some exhibitions of these and they're fantastic. do you have any other themes out there that you would really like to follow up on?
Wow. I have to think about that a little bit, Jerry. I mean, I've been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a big nature photography guy. I mean, I have wonderful pictures of barn owls and stuff that I see that I shoot because they're cool. But I wouldn't go out and just say, I'm going to be a birder and shoot bird pictures. I don't think there's enough visual stimulation for me for that. Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry, because I can't think of anything. I'm not a big architectural photographer. You know, buildings don't do it for me. The one thing that is kind of interesting, and it's because people have been sending me the pictures for the last year, don't laugh, you guys, is food.
Yeah. Huh.
I know it's referred to as food porn. People take these pictures of meals that you don't normally want to eat because there's too much cholesterol or too much sugar or something, but then they take these beautiful pictures. Yeah, I could see doing some fun stuff with, you know, lighting and kind of backgrounds, tableware you would put with some food.
Okay. I almost would have guessed maybe tattoos, given, you know, the interest in the social aspect. And, you know, that to me is an intriguing art form.
Yeah, I can, you know, I can see that. It's not a culture that I partake in, but I know people who do, and I don't have a problem with it, other than how they're going to explain it. You know, getting a full sleeve when you're 20, when you're 60, your skin sagging. But yeah,
you probably didn't foresee yourself taking part in the
cosplay. Yeah,
in that either.
Yeah, and you know, some of them are very interesting. I find some of the graphic ones that are graphic designs that are very interesting to me. But I have this feeling if you don't record them, that they're fleeting, that they're temporary. The ink is permanent, but your body changes. And it would be interesting to take pictures when somebody's 20 now, and then, you know, 20 years from now, go back and reshoot and see what's happened in the intermittent time. I think that would be very interesting. But to answer your question partially, Jerry, too, is that I was not trained as a photojournalist. When I went to school, I was trained as a commercial photographer to do commercial work. And I think some of the themes, even what I'm doing with the cosplayers, is more traditional, like a photojournalist type of thing, except I'm approaching it as portraiture. So, yeah, but I could see the tattoo stuff would be interesting in black and white as well, especially the stark graphic stuff.
So I guess that's an interesting question. If you're approaching these as a commercial photographer, the dancing or the any of your themes, how would it differ if you approached it as a photojournalist? Do you think you would have different?
But they go in with a different mindset.
Yeah.
I go in like the dance is a, you know, it's a physics thing, it's a science thing for me. The cosplayers is a social science thing. They go in because they want to tell a specific story editorially. I think they already have an editorial thing in their mind, what they're trying to do. What's the story I want to tell? I'm going to take pictures just to tell that story. And when I go in to shoot a dance concert, a lot of times I've never even seen the performance before. So I just have to work on the timing and what I'm trying to get across when I'm doing it. Yeah, it's more instantaneous. I don't think it's as plotted out as a photojournalist might do. But that's my take on that too. There was another part of that question you asked me about the dancers. Could you repeat that? Do you remember what it was, Jerry?
Well, I think you kind of answered it in your.
It's just that I had something else in my mind when you were saying it. I didn't speak to it right away.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I hadn't really thought about the different perspectives that you have in photography coming from really different trainings like that. And yeah.
I think also is how you look at the art form. I mean, I work with other photographers. I remember what it was. I work with James McGraw from Portland, Blaine Truitt-Covert, who shoots for the ballet at the same time. But they are contracted by the ballet and paid a fee to shoot what the ballet wants. And they better be perfect arabesques, and they better be perfectly timed images of turgitates. The lighting better be spot on so you can see every toe point. The agreement that I have with Oregon Ballet Theater, Body Box, all these places, is I can take whatever I want. And that I use that for artistic purposes, but I supply them with copies of everything so that they can use them if they choose in their brochures or posters, whatever it is, as long as I'm credited. They've done that in the past, and that's fine and dandy with me. But then I can use the images for artistic purposes, gallery expositions especially. And that's different from the agreement those commercial photographers have with them. They have to do what they're told. I don't, which makes me really happy. I am fiercely independent with that, with the artwork. Before I would ever take anything to an exhibition, though, like these pictures I showed you, and even the cosplayers, is you get permission. I show a dance exhibition picture. The dancers have to be identified. The choreographer has to be identified. The company has to be identified. And also the role the dancer has. Are they a principal dancer? Are they a soloist? Are they part of the corps? And I'm more than happy to do that. It promotes the company. My work gets shown. And like I said, it makes me very happy to do that.
So along the same line as Jerry, I was curious, have you ever tried to photograph fire?
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Uh-huh.
Very, very difficult. And I tried to do it because I have to talk about fire in my astronomy classes. The planet Earth is the only known location in the universe that has fire. Huh. And so I was looking for a picture of fire. Oh, I should, I'll take a picture of a bonfire or something. Boy, is that hard. Yeah, you need to have a black background, put the fire in front of it, and somehow not have the fire completely illuminating the background. So you have to stand the black off a long ways and then shoot in a way that keeps it black and you can actually see the flame structure. If not, it's pretty amorphous stuff. You can't really get nice outlines of it. But yeah, that's an interesting question, Dominique. Yeah.
Yeah, looking at your sky pictures, it made me think of fire.
Yeah. Like I said, the things in the sky amaze me. I have tons of pictures of rainbows. Corvallis has got rainbows every other day, and they're pretty intense. Lots of pictures of sundogs. I find those really interesting as well when we have rings around the sun. Or 2 nights ago, we had a massive moon dog, big ring around the moon that was super beautiful.
Yep. And
last night, I wish that the trees weren't in the way, because that moon rising, the super moon yesterday, the pink moon, was absolutely gorgeous. Yep. But to go out and set the tripod and everything up and try to wait for it to clear the trees, would have been 12 midnight before I could have done that. Yep. But yeah, happy stuff. Taking pictures has always made me uplifted and fairly joyous inside. I love taking pictures. Like I said, portraits of friends, portraits of family. If I could do that, the cosplayers, it's joyous to do that. To be welcomed into an artistic community like the world of professional dancers, and to know that I respect what they do for who they are and the power of their athleticism and their beauty of their art form, and then to have them be appreciative of my photographs. One of the things I always do is give dancers copies of pictures, because I learned very early on that people like James and Blaine, when they're shooting, that material belongs to the dance company. The dancers don't get anything, unless they get a brochure with their picture in it. And I thought it was not okay to have someone like Kathy Martusa, when I gave her that picture about being fierce. Said I've been dancing professionally for 12 years. I don't have a picture of myself.
Wow.
And I did not think that that was okay. And they'll go, well, what do I owe you? I said, dancers don't pay me for pictures. I won't take your money. So I think you should have this. So yeah, I just won't photograph dancers for money. I just won't do it.
Great. Okay, this is a fascinating conversation. It's after 5, and so
Oh, well, thank you for your questions, everyone. I really enjoy them in a way that you might not understand. I don't get asked about this stuff, and so I don't spend a lot of time often thinking about it, what it means to me or what it brings out of me. And so your questions really help me place that into perspective as well.
Good. We enjoyed it.
Yes,
Well,
totally.
thanks.
That was really great talk. Super interesting conversation.
Happy to do it. Always happy to help.
And thank you, everybody, for attending. And
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you. It was
welcome.
great.
My pleasure to be here as well.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Cynthia, good to see your face.
Yeah. Yeah. I love seeing just it's a slide